We're going to be looking at Learning Outcome 2 today. So yesterday we just looked at some Learning Outcome 1 and a little bit of the history of person-centered care, what the values are, and we looked at some sort of challenges and how we can overcome those challenges. Now we're going to look at the equality and diversity part of the person-centered approach. So Learning Outcome 2 is understand equality, diversity, and discrimination in relation to person-centered approaches. Now, there are 4 assessment criteria in here, 3 for the pass and 1 for the distinction. So 2.1, explain the concepts of equality, diversity, and discrimination in a health and social care context. So here we're just going to write down what is equality, what is diversity, what is discrimination. So it's nice and simple. 2.2 is describe legislation on equality, diversity, and discrimination that promotes a person-centered approach. So on here, we're just going to look at what the different laws and regulations are, and we're going to work off that. 2.3 is describe sources of information, advice, and support about equality, diversity, and discrimination that is available for individuals using health and social care. So we're going to look at what sort of regulations watchdogs are about. And then the distinction questions assess the effectiveness of national initiatives in promoting anti-discriminatory practice in a health and social care context. So we've had Nancy join us. So good morning, Nancy. We're just making a start now. So the first couple of slides, we're just going to talk about equality and diversity. Now, we're all aware of equality and diversity. Now, this, at the moment, is the term used for equal opportunities. And now there's a legal obligation to protect against discrimination. So regardless of where you are, what you're doing, what sort of setting you're in, which organization you're in, equality and diversity is a major issue everywhere. Now, discrimination can be against a person's sex, their gender, their disability, their sexual orientation, what their religious beliefs are, what their cultural practices are, their race, or their age. Now, when we're going to be looking at equality and diversity now, so for equality, it means equal rights and treatments to all individuals, and diversity is even though you're different, some people might be different from what others might expect to be normal, it doesn't mean you should be treated in less than anything. So diversity is different from what is normal or what is expected by that person. So what is diversity? So when we're looking at diversity, we're looking at valuing differences between people and to look at those differences and see how they can contribute to create a richer and more creative and more productive working environment. So diversity is about respecting each individual. So it's about their race, their culture, their national origin, their region of where they're from, their gender, sexual orientation, like we said, age, marital status, religion, ethnicity, disability, their own physical ability, their family structure, their health, their values, and their politics. So about everything that makes a person. So we just looked at a little bit of a meaning of what equality and diversity is and what discrimination is. Now we'll just make a start into 2.1. And on this little section, we're just going to talk about what equality is, what diversity is, and what discrimination is. So, 2.1, explain the concepts of equality, diversity, and discrimination in a health and social care context. So, equality is where everyone in a society is given the same right, respect, and chance as others. Equality is about treating everyone as an individual, treating everyone fairly, and supporting everybody in the right way. So you're making sure that you're providing access to the same opportunities that everybody is getting. So an example, I'm treated to expect all I'm expected to treat all service users equally. They might come from different backgrounds and cultures, they might have different beliefs from me, but I'm still going to treat every single one of those people that come in to see me equally. I'm not going to treat one better than the other. Now, diversity is about appreciating the differences between people, and you're actually treating people's values as well. You're looking at their beliefs, their cultures, their lifestyles, and you're doing all of this with respect. So it's about where you treat the individual and you give them support as a person, you know, that you're actually treating every single person with respect and dignity. You've got to make sure that you actually ensure that you work in a non-judgmental way. So you're not forming ideas about someone. They might be covered in tattoos or piercings, or it might be somebody who's completely covered head to toe, or maybe wears minimal clothing and shows a lot of skin. It really doesn't matter what sort of way they're dressed or what sort of way they're behaving. It's about you treating them in a non-judgmental way. So make sure that you're being inclusive and that you're treating everybody positively and that you're giving them good care. So an example of this could be my workplace has residents who are different in various ways. So they've got different languages, they've got different skin color, different sexual orientation, they've got different religious beliefs and so on. But that doesn't mean I'm going to treat somebody who might be of a different sexual orientation to me in a different way, or doesn't mean that I'm going to treat someone who's of a different religion to me badly. You're going to make sure that you treat everybody with respect of who they are as an individual. And now coming on to discrimination. Discrimination is an unfair treatment to a person or a group of people. Now this depends on certain characteristics. It might be because, again, of the same points that we talked about, their age, their sexual orientation, it might be because of their skin color, it might be their accent. Discrimination does take place, unfortunately. So an idea of this could be, so if somebody's going in to have a job interview, then instead of looking at what sort of how they look or how they behave or what the skin color is, or if an application has gone in and they're saying, oh, I don't like this name, it shows me that this person might be of a Mexican origin or Spanish, or they might be African American. You make sure that you're not discriminating against or treating people unfairly just because of how they look or what their accent is, or what sort of what your own preconceived notions are. So if you're discriminating against people, you're going against the Equality Act of 2010. So there are different ways that you can discriminate against someone. So you can do direct discrimination, indirect discrimination, and positive discrimination. Does anybody know what any of these mean? What direct discrimination is, indirect or positive discrimination? It's okay if you don't know, you can let me know and I'll explain them.
Oh, I think we know direct discrimination, but we don't know indirect and positive.
Do you know, indirect is when you it's when you're doing something without even realizing it. So, for example, if there's if you've got some people who celebrate, like, for example, the Jewish community, their Saturdays are a holy day for them. It's a day of rest. They like to have that Saturday off so they can do they can go to the synagogue and they can actually go and, you know, just have some time with their families. Now, if you put it into your, so if you're a manager in a shop and you say that every employee has to work at least 2 Saturdays a month, then you're indirectly discriminating against them because they're not able to, so you're not focusing on them straight away and saying, because you celebrate this, I'm going to look at you and I'm going to say no. You put a rule in place which will have a negative impact on them. And then there's another one where, say, if you've got a rule in work saying that no head coverings are to be allowed, that you have to be bareheaded, but that will be indirectly discriminating against Sikh men who might wear a turban, against Muslim women who might wear a headscarf, or against other people who might wear a hat. Like for Jewish people, they wear their hat as a sign of their faith. So that's what we mean by indirect discrimination, when you're doing something that will affect somebody's in a particular way.
And then what is the positive one?
Yeah, positive discrimination is when you're actually favoring someone or favoring a particular group of people rather than other people. So you might say that, oh, okay, I know that, for example, this group of students, they come in, they work really hard, they'll take less pay for me, and I know I'll get them to work on weekends for me, and they come in and they actually work really hard. So there's a group of people that will come in. Or if you're favoring against certain people based on a skin color, saying that I know, you put a judgment on them and say, I know these people come in and they're really hardworking, they'll really graft for me and they'll just get on with it. Do you understand what I'm saying with that? I'll just see if I can find it.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So, if you're saying that, oh, okay, for example, if I'm hiring someone now and I think, oh, I've got lots of able-bodied people here, I really need to hire somebody in a wheelchair, or I should really try and hire somebody that's got a learning disability. So you're actively going out and trying to hiring someone just because they're in a wheelchair or just because they've got a learning disability, so you can fill your quota and say, yeah, I'm really good, I'm doing equality and diversity in my workplace. That type of example that works better.
Yeah, we get it now. I get it.
Fantastic. So to summarize, equality, diversity and discrimination in healthcare settings, they're actually at the core of everything. I mean, you're going to be trained to deal with all of these issues at a high quality and a high standard of care on a daily basis. Even automatically, you'll be making sure that you're not discriminating against others, that you're treating everyone equally, and that there is a lot of different type of people that you will come across. So if you're working in healthcare, or even if you're dropping your children off to school, you'll notice there's a diverse range of people everywhere you go. Now, with healthcare, equality, diversity and discrimination in person-centered approach, this means that your employers need to work to promote equality in care, recognize and value the diversity of all of those that are being cared for, and make sure that you're trying to get rid of inequalities, that you're trying to get rid of discrimination in health sectors. So, you keep an eye out for it, see where you notice something that's not right, and point it out and try and work towards making sure that it's a good environment. So there you go. Let's see. We just had somebody else join us as well. Could I take your name? Morning.
Good morning. My name is Julia.
Oh, hi, Julia. How are you?
My network is really bad where I am.
Oh, that's no problem. We'll start recording, so if you do drop off, we're just talking about equality and diversity.
Yeah.
We'll just start off with that.
And how are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I'm going to go on to 2.2.
I'm barely here.
So we're just going to look at legislations now. So 2.2 is describe legislation on equality, diversity and discrimination that promotes a person-centered approach. Now this is just a few legislations that we're going over the next slide. So legislations are there. Really, everything that we do in the workplace is pulled off a legislation. All the policies and all the practices and all the procedures that you've got will reflect your legislations. So you've got the health and safety policy at work, you've got equality policies at work, equality and diversity, you've got safeguarding, you've got so many different policies that you follow on a daily basis, and all of these are pulled off legislations. They look at the main legislations and they tweak them, they change them, they see what parts reflect to their workplace and they work in accordance to that. So these legislations that we're going to look at are there to make sure that we've got dignity in care. So it's all about equality and diversity in this section. So we've got the Human Rights Act, and some of these legislations within this, it covers discrimination, mental capacity, sexual offences, and information legislation. Sometimes you'll notice that one legislation might conflict with the other, and unfortunately that does happen, but it's possibly something that they're looking to sort out. So within healthcare, we've got a duty to promote diversity and quality across all areas. So as long as we're promoting respect, looking at people's beliefs and respecting them, respecting their values, cultures, and lifestyles, and also appreciating their differences. So for you looking at someone coming into your care, you might think, oh my goodness, I've never seen a person like this, or I haven't seen someone who's got this type of thoughts and values. But then again, they might be thinking about the same thing about you. So it's always good to make sure that even if everyone's got differences, you just value them and respect them. You don't have to agree with them. It's just to be respectful. So we've got the Equality Act of 2010. Now, this act means to treat people with fairness. It's unlawful to treat people differently because of their gender, and also any injustices in health and social care sectors. It means that everybody needs to be treated equally and have the same access to services when they're needed. They should get high quality care, the care that they deserve. And for person-centered, this means to ensure that every person in every setting has the same choices and opportunities. So you're not treating somebody differently because they might be paying for their care, or against somebody who might not be paying for their care. Or not to treat somebody, say an elderly person, to not get treatments over a young person because thinking, oh, they've had their life, why should we bother? Let's treat that other person first. Everybody should be treated equally. Now, person-centered care also protects people from abuse. It promotes compassion and dignity within that. And it also helps you to make good decisions for vulnerable people. The Mental Capacity Act of 2005. Now, this is there to protect any individuals who are vulnerable. They might not be able to make decisions on their own. They might not have family members that are there that are looking for their best interest either. So it might be things like if somebody's got a learning disability, they might have a dementia, they might have a brain injury, they might have autism, something that will severely disable them from making a decision for themselves. Also, in person-centered care, the Mental Capacity Act makes it clear who can make decisions and how. So for the individuals who can make them. If they can make them themselves, that's fantastic. If the family's in a position where they're looking at the right interests for that person, then they'll make the decisions. But if there's a case where the individual can't make a decision about their care because of, say, dementia, and then the family members are not looking after the best interest, there will be an advocate, somebody will be put in charge of their care who will work towards making sure that that person gets the highest quality of care that will meet their needs. So this act is fantastic, to be honest. It's there put in place to make sure that everyone is getting treated the way they need to be. And we're coming on to the Human Rights Act again. So we looked at it a little bit earlier. So this actually sets out the right that every person has a right to be heard, that they've got the power to challenge discrimination, and they've also got the right to be safeguarded, especially if there's a vulnerable individual. Now, this act was built on the freedoms with the European Convention on Human Rights. So it applies to all aspects of humans, they've got and their rights that they've got, and it's central to what you'll do in health and social care. So you'll always be following this. In a person-centered approach, this is done through day-to-day support where you're offering care to individuals. You're giving them support with their personal hygiene, their eating, their washing. You might be talking about confidential information, but you're still making sure that you're only talking about these things with the right people and in a secure place. And under the Human Rights Act of 1989, people have the right to life and protection from torture. We're almost at the end. I know it's quite a lot here. So we've got the Health and Social Care Act of 2010. So this was actually established to have an equality of duties for all of the public sector. It gives individuals an excellent voice in their care, and it's actually reformed the program following the 2010 general election. So what happened there was we've got the Health and Social Care Act. It was introduced, to see which ways the NHS can actually be measured. So the NHS is a national treasure for us. We're really lucky that we've got the NHS here, that we get free treatments. We're not having to go in and we're not worrying about having to pay for something or pay for operations compared to other countries. So we're really lucky that we've got the NHS. But again, everything needs to be measured, and the Health and Social Care Act is there to make sure that this is measured and that everything is being done in the way it should be. So with this, it's put the clinicians at the center of the commissioning to make sure that the patients are being empowered and that they're actually the focus for public health. So it's not a money-making scheme where you think, I'm going to come in, I'm going to have 50 patients in 1 hour, I'm going to turn them over, and I'm going to get money per patient. It's actually taking your time and focusing on the patient and making sure that you're fulfilling what they need. And then the final one, the Care Act of 2014. And this just carries duties concerning assessing people's needs to see if they're eligible for support, if they're eligible for publicly funded care, and what sort of support they actually need. Within this, an assessment is carried out, and it just looks at anybody who needs care and support, no matter if they have to pay for it or no matter if they're funded by the government. It's also there to assess if a person's needs and how they impact on their well-being, and to actually work towards a goal where they get the best possible outcome to achieve what you need to achieve. It helps you to provide access to independent professionals, and it supports personal involvement, if you actually need these independent professionals' opinions. So that was 2.2. Does anybody have any questions or something they want to go over? I'm hoping that means you're okay. So we're going to go on to 2.3. And this is just about sources of information. So describe sources of information, advice, and support about equality, diversity, and discrimination that is available for individuals using health and social care services. So we're just going to look at how do we get information. You might have gone into work and you might have noticed something that you don't quite like, or there might be some practices that are being quite discriminatory, or that someone's not being treated equally. So how can you actually get hold of this information that you need to get support and advice about equality, diversity, and discrimination? So the best way to do these things is look at your policies and procedures of the place that you're working in. Now, these policies and procedures, they'll either be on the website of where you're working. They'll most likely be on the intranet, that's the personal network for your workplace, where there's normally a section for policies and procedures. And you might have handbooks, you might have a folder. They're normally available via email anyway. So policies and procedures are quite easy to get hold of. Every healthcare provider will have policies and procedures, and they just look at what sort of rules you've got about equality and diversity and how it should be done and who you need to speak to if there's ever an issue. So that's always your first port of call. Then you've got the Government's Equality Commission. So to promote and keep equality and human rights law in England and Scotland's own way, that's what they're for. They provide advice and support in equality and diversity, and they also support service users. It focuses on explaining individual legal rights and any sort of remedies, any sort of solutions with supporting them. And it also explains the different options. If there's ever an issue that's come up, if a resolution needs to be done, it'll give you different options of how you can get this done. So it helps to build eligibility for legal aid, and it gives you a place where you can approach, just to even go straight to and find out what sort of legal services you can get and how to lodge any claims or any issues that you might have come up with. So this one is more patient focused, this little set, this one. It's got advocacy services as well. So it will have somebody there if you can't communicate for yourself. If there's a service user that can't communicate for themselves, they will be provided with an advocate. So this is a person who will be in charge of their case, and they will work for them. So they'll give them advice and support. They'll make sure that the equality and diversity and discrimination are being supported with all these. And you can actually get information about this from, now from the internet is very easy, but you can get information from the councils and the local libraries. And then you've got the Citizens Advice Bureau. Now, this service here provides people the knowledge and confidence to find their way forward. They provide advice and guidance regarding any type of aspect, really. So not just health and social care. You might have had an issue where you bought something really expensive and they're not taking it back and you're wanting to get advice, you can go to them. So they'll look at equality, diversity and discrimination. And now we've got Mabel here. Now you'll come across Mabel when we do the assignment. Now, Mabel is a figurative service user. It's all based on her when we come to the assignment. She's got a PEG feed. She's got a lot of other different issues with her. So in the case of Mabel, who doesn't want to stay in hospital, she wants to go home. She just wants to be in her own family. She can get legal aid, she can get help with her mobility, and she can also be able to apply for assistance from the Advice Bureau. And then you've got the CQC. You'll probably have come across this before as well. So the Care Quality Commission, they're an independent regulator of health and social care. The CQC promotes equality, diversity and discrimination and makes sure that any poor practices are dealt with. It helps service users know what their rights are, what their legislations are, and it's there to take action if there's any investigations that need to be done. It's there to make sure that any penalties are put in place if there's problems and if they're not sorted. CQC also monitors and regulates services, so they're there to make sure that the organization is running the correct way, that they're meeting the standards that are being put into place. So that was 2.3. Does anybody got any questions for here?
Yeah. Yeah. A question about CQC.
But sorry, your voice is cutting out.
Yeah, I said I have a question about CQC.
Yes.
Yes. I don't think CQC they are powerful because I have here many cases where people in care home, especially in regards to workers are not willing to provide staff equipment that they to carry out.
Mm-hmm.
So this case, I even make a recommendation. I want for this because it's within your right to have the carry out.
But your voice keeps cutting out quite a lot. I can't hear you very clearly. I know you're asking about the CQC and about their decision making.
Yeah, they don't seem to be as powerful as they used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying, because CQC were like the big scary body. They were like Ofsted for like Ofsted is for schools, where they come and inspect things. It was the same sort of system for CQC with settings in place. But yeah, I do agree that they've not really got that same power or that same fear that they used to have before. It's not the same sort of system. Unfortunately, you get used to things and it does work in that way. So it's probably the CQC themselves have to work towards, maybe they've been a bit lenient in the past, maybe they've let things go. So that's why that sort of thinking has come into place. But on a normal level, there should be one of those places where, you know, you're thinking, you think about them and you think, oh my goodness, I've got the CQC are going to come and check us out. There should be some sort of accountability with it. But I understand what you're saying. Things do change, and it does not have the same sort of invoke the same sort of power as it used to. So shall we go on to the distinction question? Let's see. So this is just about the effectiveness of national initiatives. So we're going to assess the effectiveness of national initiatives in promoting anti-discriminatory practice in a health and social care context. So when we're in work anyway, we want to make sure that we're getting an anti-discriminatory practice regardless, and that we're looking at people's promoting equality and diversity and so on. So with anti-discriminatory practice within your own practice, these are there to counteract any adverse effects on discrimination on individuals when they're receiving treatment at care centres. Is there to try and eliminate discrimination in all forms. So to make sure that we're treating everyone in an equal manner. So certain groups of individuals are prone to be more discriminated than others. So people who might have learning difficulties, older adults, or people with physical disabilities, mental health patients, women, minority groups, and minority religious groups these groups are more likely to be discriminated against. It might be directly, and it might be indirectly. Mostly it's indirectly without even someone thinking about it. But unfortunately, it does happen, which is why we want to look at anti-discriminatory practices. So we've got the impact of the legislations and the national initiatives. So these are the impacts now. You've got empowerment. So legislative initiatives like the Mental Capacity Act and the Equality Act and the Health and Social Care Act, along with the Human Rights Act and so on. They're there to encourage individuals to make informed choices. They're there to let them know that this is what you're allowed to have. You're allowed to have your rights respected. You're allowed to dignity. You're allowed to privacy. So it's there telling them this is what you're allowed, and then they can understand, right, I'm allowed these things. Why is this not happening for me? And they can bring it up and say, you are not treating me in the care that I need to be treated. It raises the standard for care. So the CQC, they're the national body and they represent views of the health and social care services. Now the CQC actually register and create licenses for care services, and they make sure that the standards of quality and care are being met. They monitor all the quality services, and they actually make sure that care providers display respect for equality, diversity, and anti-discrimination, and that they follow the laws. And they also ensure that all organizations that provide care will follow the law. If they don't, they'll be closed down and they'll be taken to court. And then we've got the policies and procedures. So in healthcare settings, you've got all of your information and advice and support on policies and procedures. These policies and procedures are there in the first place. You'll start work, you'll be given a set of policies and procedures, mainly the safeguarding and equality and diversity ones to start off with. And it'll say, read through these and sign these papers. When you're done, let us know. So you're there, you're already handed like a list of things that you know you can do and you know you can't do. So you're all following the same sort of setting. So you got an example of this: medical centres and childcare centres have care quality commissions. They've got skills for care. You've got nursing and care homes. You've got community health centres. You've got GPs. You've got colleges, universities. Every single place that you can think of will have a policy and procedure. You can walk into Next now for shopping, and they'll have policies and procedures in place for their employees as well. So these procedures and policies, they just explain things that need to be taken step by step. You know, it gives you clear guidelines of what you can do, what you're allowed to do. If there's ever an issue, what is the correct course of action? So you're not just creating things by yourself and getting into trouble by doing things without knowing. You've got set guidelines that you know you can follow, which I think are fantastic, because then everybody does the same sort of thing and you're not getting inequalities where somebody will get treated a little bit better because the person doesn't know what they're doing, or a little bit worse because they didn't know what they're doing. Everyone's going on the same boat. And the last slide, just to summarize, you've got staff selection and interview procedures as well. So if you're going for a job or you're interviewing someone, you know, you've got to make sure that you're following the Equality Act. You know, it has an impact on who you select and, you know, how you look at things. Nowadays, when companies are getting so many job applications nowadays, what they're doing is they're having the names cropped off the top. So all the personal details will just get taken off, and they'll just be left with that person's experience and what they are now. The reason that the name, age, address, all of those, date of birth, get taken off is so that the people who are employing someone can't discriminate against someone against their age. They're going to actually just look at the qualifications, they're going to look at their experience and invite people to interviews in accordance to that. And it's fantastic that they're doing that now, because it really gets rid of that ageism fact where somebody might be in their 60s and applying for a job, but they might not get even invited to that job, even if they've got relevant experience, just because of their age. Now, we also have things like a DBS check that is done to make sure that we don't have any convictions or any offences that might affect the patients or the vulnerable people that are in our care. So this is also for person-centred approach, because you don't want somebody coming into work who might be putting others, colleagues, and also service users in danger. So which is why a DBS check is always done now. So that was just the 2D1, where we looked at the assessing what sort of policies and procedures and legislations we've got in place. So anybody got any questions in regard to this? So, just going to